Are you thinking about establishing a project management process in your organization? Well, chances are you feel a little overwhelmed right now, and that's completely understandable. There are all these artifacts, templates, and frameworks out there. It's really confusing. What do you need? And where do you even start drafting a process? This is what we're going to talk about in this video to give you a clear path forward. We talk about what project management processes can do for you, why they matter, and how you can set them up in a way that actually supports your team instead of just creating unnecessary paperwork. So let's dive in. At the core, project management processes give you three big benefits. Clarity. Thanks to processes, you always know what stage a project is in, what's happening, who's in charge, and what the next steps are. We don't have to guess. Second benefit, consistency in results. And that's probably the biggest benefit. Projects are run by people, and people have vastly different working styles and personalities. Some people are super organized, others less so. Some people are strong communicators, while others struggle to communicate proactively. And those differences can lead to vastly different outcomes. With processes, we can give project managers a clear framework to follow, helping them stay focused and meet the basic communication needs. With a project management process, the results become less dependent on who's actually managing a project. Third benefit is control. Processes give you visibility into risks, deadlines, and resource issues. That way you can catch problems early before they turn into bigger surprises. The first step in defining a project management process actually comes before the project even starts. You need some sort of vetting process, a way to decide which initiatives are truly worth the effort and money. Because even the best process can't rescue a project that was built on sinking sand. If an idea doesn't seem to provide enough value, if it lacks the necessary backing in the organization, or if just the timing isn't right, no checklist, no process can turn that project into a success story. And that's why one of the toughest but also most important decisions is setting clear criteria for what qualifies as a project and decide how new project ideas are going to be vetted or scored. For this, you usually set up some form of project board. That's how we called it at my company. It's a group of senior leaders from different areas whose job it is to review ideas from multiple angles, create alignment, and decide if a project gets the green lights. So the first part of defining a process is actually defining a project intake process. And while you're defining project intake, it's also important to clarify roles. Who sponsors a project? Who manages it day to day? And who makes the key decisions? This avoids confusion later on. Everyone should know their part. The sponsor provides backing and removes roadblocks. The project manager drives the work forward on a day-to-day basis. And the steering committee reviews progress and approves major changes. So let's say a project has been approved. Now what? This is where structure comes in. Every project needs a clear structure with defined stages it has to go through. We can then define the required action points for each stage, specific tasks or deliverables that the project team has to provide before moving into the next stage. Why is this important? It's all about minimizing risk and avoiding unnecessary effort. We want to make sure a project is actually ready before moving into the next stage. That's why we can also create checkpoints at certain intervals where the steering committee can review progress, see if a project is doing fine, and approve it for the next stage. So think about a suitable structure for your type of projects. The minimum structure you want to have is separate stages for planning, concept work, implementation or execution, and the closing or handover part. And you may use different labels. What matters is that we clearly separate planning work from the conceptual work from the actual implementation, where most of the spending is going to happen. Are you still with me? Then let's talk about documents, the different artifacts. What is helpful, what is optional? My advice is to keep it simple. A great starting point is a standard project slide deck covering the basics. What the project is about, the key benefits, major stakeholders, costs, and the timeline. Having a standard format means that each project is presented in the same way and leaders can extract the information relevant to them. Instead of a PowerPoint, you could also create a simple Word document with those sections, and this then becomes your project charter. You also want to have a standard budget form. Finance needs to understand the cost structure of a project, and with a standard form we can ensure that costs are captured in a consistent way. What about the other artifacts like risk log, rate log, stakeholder matrix, etc.? Of course it's important to understand the risks of a project, but instead of a whole pile of separate documents, this information can simply be provided via your project slide deck or project charter. You don't want to overwhelm your project managers. By keeping the documentation lean and simple, project leaders are more likely to stick to the process. What you want to give to your project managers are checklists. Checklists with the key action steps to be completed in each project stage. Remember, we talked about raising consistency in outcomes. Checklists are what really create consistency. Instead of every project manager doing things their own way, the key steps are written down and followed every time. That's how you get reliable results no matter who's in charge of a project. Checklists, that's the perfect segue into the next aspect, which is project governance. Let's talk about building some basic project governance. One thing you'll want to require is that every project has a dedicated steering committee. It doesn't demand much time from the members, but it brings big benefits. It gives project managers a sounding board and a forum to discuss roadblocks. And this automatically brings in a level of accountability, because leadership is regularly checking in, asking questions, and making the necessary decisions. And if you're working towards something like ISO 9001, this kind of structure and governance is exactly what auditors want to see. Clear decision making, regular oversight, and documented processes. Besides that, you also want to have some regular progress meetings in every project. And those don't have to be long or overly formal, but they create a rhythm where updates are shared and issues are being discussed. So this was a quick overview on how to shape a project management process. Of course, building the entire process in detail is more complex, and we haven't spoken about all the nuances like agile versus waterfall projects or having different processes for different types of projects. But my goal was to give you a simple roadmap to get started. So what can you do next? Start by drafting a simple process document that outlines the basics of your process. Project structure, key stages, project roles, and the governance you want to see in place. Don't overthink it. Get input from your most experienced project managers. Launch it and then refine your process as you move along. The most important thing is to begin with something clear and simple and then improve it as your organization grows into it. I hope that was helpful. I'll be linking some additional resources below the video, so make sure to check that out. And if you have any questions, drop your questions in the comments. Thanks for watching. I'm Adrian, and I'll see you around.